Trump is being treated to a lot of pomp and circumstance while also being protected from the country's opinions of him. Now, all of that is expensive, with the 2-day visit thought to be costing the UK taxpayer in excess of £5 million. I'm actually surprised. I thought it would probably be more than that. But British Prime Minister Keir Starmer already appears to have got something in return. The UK and US have announced a new tech prosperity deal to coincide with the visit, which will see the two countries cooperate in areas like artificial intelligence, quantum computing, and nuclear power. According to the government, the deal has already resulted in £31 billion of investments and partnerships being agreed, which will be injected into the UK at some point in the near future. And a large chunk of that promised investment is coming from Microsoft. So the company has announced a £22 billion spending package. That's the largest it's ever made outside of the United States. But are there strings attached? And is the UK giving up its digital sovereignty by rolling out the red carpet, not just to the president, but to AI bosses too? Well, Microsoft CEO Satya Nadella says that's not the case.
To me, it's not about giving up sovereignty. It's about getting more leverage to exercise your sovereignty. We are making this capital investment in the UK soil, right? So these are AI factories, cloud factories that are very much part of the infrastructure of the United Kingdom. And so you have now trusted American technology that UK can use and companies across the UK can use to create more technology for the United Kingdom and for the United States and the world.
Microsoft's investment will be used to build AI infrastructure like data centers, as well as the UK's largest supercomputer. And the Northeast has been singled out for particular investment as a so-called AI growth zone. And the region will receive special support in planning and energy provision. Of course, these things eat up a lot of energy. Other big tech investors include Google, who will open a new data center in Hertfordshire, as well as US chip manufacturer NVIDIA. Their boss said this to the BBC Today.
This is the week that I declare that UK will be an AI superpower. And that was the mandate from Prime Minister Starmer. He wants the UK to be an AI superpower. He recognizes that the ingredients are all right here.
Jensen Huang is in the UK with Donald Trump, as are tech bosses Sam Altman of OpenAI and Satya Nadella of Microsoft, who you saw earlier. Apple's Tim Cook is set to join the president and king at the state banquet this evening. So does this make all the brown-nosing of Donald Trump worth it? I'm joined by Bhargav Srinivasa Deskikan, AI and tech lead at the Autonomy Institute. Thank you so much for joining us. Let's begin on what Jensen Huang said. He said, we can be an AI superpower. I suppose my first question for you is, should we want to be?
Should we want to be? Thanks for having me, Michael. Yeah, it's a tough one because, well, I guess it being framed as a geopolitical question kind of allows to get the pesky activists out of the way as well, right? But should we want to be? I suppose in one way, yes, in the sense that in general, maybe we can agree that investment is good. Ideally, public investment, of course. And we do want to somehow, given that it's going to start becoming a national security issue, and, well, for example, China is racing ahead, the US is racing ahead. But even if we stop thinking about it in the context of, maybe a war or a situation like that, it would be good to, I don't know, I would say keep up with a certain aspect of AI technologies. I wouldn't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. My cards on the table. My background is in computer science. Since then, my political allegiances have made me think about how can we make this work for us and work for workers? Is that possible at all? Yeah, sorry. Does that kind of answer your question? Maybe.
Well, I mean, it opens up a few avenues for exploration. I suppose you're talking there about national security. So these will still be sort of owned and run by American companies, Microsoft, Google. I suppose NVIDIA won't be running them because they'll just be supplying the chips. But so if the companies are American-based, but it's situated in the UK, is that still beneficial to the UK in some respect? I suppose that means that, it will create some employment in Britain, but will it give us any control over the technology?
No. And I think so it's funny because, if we are going to get what 31 billion pounds of investment, I can think of many other things that are not AI that money would rather go into. But if it was going to be spent, it would much rather be public so that we own it, we decide what we want to do with it. For example, do we want more TikToks, or do we want, I don't know, more libraries that can kind of synthesize information, let us pick things up the way we want to digitally, for example. We're not able to choose what we want to do with this kind of investment. And the first layer, I mean, the reason why Amazon, for example, is also so powerful is because with AWS, they own all of the infrastructure. This allows them to kind of be, it's tough to boycott AWS. It's tough to boycott even Google to a certain extent, right? And I think the issue for me with this investment is that we only get the stack above the kind of critical infrastructure. So even in the context of, to your point, in the context of the global security, we're not really making the kind of progress we want. If any, at best, what we're getting is some kind of job creation. But I would say that's it at best, really. Now, if it is all publicly owned, for example, with what China is doing, I think that's a different story. In that case, and then maybe we decide what we want to do with it. For example, there are a few legitimate AI use cases. I can think of, grid optimization, a new kind of material synthesis for renewable energy. Given that we don't have copper access is going to be a problem, there can be certain like niche scientific use cases for AI where I'm like, okay, maybe it's not all bad. But this kind of investment, I would say it's really going to benefit the US tech companies, and it will, there'll be some GDP growth, if anyone cares about that. I mean, maybe I care about it a bit less. But in the context of national security, or even just kind of sovereignty, or us being in charge of what we want to do with the money we're spending, it's not looking so great.
Does it matter where a data center is? So I suppose that's sort of like, by my understanding, when it comes to AI and data centers, so the data center is needed to train the model, so sort of to give it the weights and stuff. Now, I presume that sort of for training a model, it doesn't really matter where it is. It could be trained anywhere, and then you sort of, you get the product. And then it's also used for inference. So every time I go on ChatGPT and ask it a question, which I do multiple times a day, does it, what data center is doing the crunching, and does it matter where that is? Do we get some benefit by these data centers being closer to us?
For inference, yes. Not for training. It doesn't matter where the training happens. Once the training happens, what's called a model weight kind of thing. If there are neurons firing, those are kind of loaded up as a sense. But once it's loaded up, you can move it around. So for the training, it doesn't really matter, but for inference, it does matter. But the funny thing is, given the kind of massive climate impact of data centers, ideally we shouldn't be expecting an LLM response in 1 second or 5 seconds or whatever. For example, there is, I think, even within the legitimate scientific use of AI, in those cases, it's possible to do something called a batch training, where you basically make the query, but then you wait for grid levels, or you wait for the load to be less, and then you ask for the query to be done. When you do it like this, it basically means that there's actually less of a climate impact, because you're not asking for an immediate response. But that doesn't make for a great consumer product. For you to ask a question and then wait for a couple of days. So that's why they want to build the data centers here in the UK, is because it'll then enable inference-related product development. That's why Oracle is psyched, because they OpenAI and Oracle had a big deal, and I think the CEO of Oracle was saying that all the money to be made is to be made in inference, right? So quick inference, just immediately asking a question, getting an answer. That's where the money is, but it also is where a lot of climate damage is. So from the perspective of getting a quick answer back in the context of inference, yes, it is useful. I mean, but the usefulness is maybe 1 second instead of 3 seconds. I mean, maybe don't quote me on that, but is it worth the impact? I would say probably not.
There's lots of talk about an AI bubble perhaps bursting at some point. I mean, Sam Altman's talked about that himself. And the idea is because so much money is being invested into data centers that potentially at some point you might get overcapacity when people realize, if people realize that it's actually not that easy to make a profit from this particular technology. If there were to be a sort of AI bubble popping, What would that mean for the UK after having attracted all of this investment? Would we end up with a bunch of stranded assets, or I suppose it's their money, it's Microsoft's money, so it doesn't really matter if they waste it here instead of wasting it somewhere else?
Well, this is what kind of really, really scares me actually about the bubble bursting is that once I definitely think there is going to be an extent of a bubble bursting. It's tough to say when and how it'll play out. But my main worry is as a lot of different commercial wrapper companies, wrapper companies basically, like, I don't know, so you have something like a AI teacher or something, and then I think a lot of these companies are going to go bust because people are going to realize that it's not going to be so smooth. But there are some situations where AI will get you a return on your profit, a return on your investment, and that is basically extraction from our planet and war. So my main worry is when all the non-profitable stuff goes kaput, the only things that are worth keeping from the perspective of, well, from the perspective of capitalism, really, is going to be the war and yeah, just war and extraction. So my worry is when the bubble bursts, all the kind of commercial applications will start to die down just because they won't make enough money. But the stuff that does make money is the most horrible, earth shattering stuff there is. So that's kind of one particular way in which it's not just me. There's a bunch of people who are talking about this kind of way it plays out, where when kind of commercial use cases die out, the most extractive, harmful use case. And we're already seeing, for example, AI being used in Gaza, AI being, so that it's already complicit for a lot of really heinous, horrible stuff. My worry is that at least right now we have commercial fluff for it to not be only extraction. 2024, by the way, since 2024 onwards, a lot of tech companies have gone back on their commitment to no AI and war. So basically now AI and war is open game. So that's my kind of, I guess, my first spiel about what might happen when the bubble bursts. And in the other context, and I think this is where it's kind of a stroke of genius from the context of Microsoft, Nvidia, and others, is that all the things that might go bust are the higher level applications on the stack, right? Like the actual data centers, there will always likely be some kind of use case for that. But it just might not be for commercial facing applications. It might be for whatever heinous national security stuff that might be needed. So my worry is if it's all UK companies who are the kind of wrappers and they go burst, it might be the case that we end up facing the fall of the bubble bursting, but we don't necessarily get the benefits. But who will get the benefits is the kind of infrastructure payout, which is going to happen in the first place. Yeah, at the Autonomy Institute, we have some upcoming, we have a grant with the AI Security Institute to look at labor market impacts. And we also have upcoming projects on looking at the kind of market dynamics of how certain kind of AI futures might play out. So maybe I could give you a better, kind of more backed up answer in a few months. But as of now, I'm not feeling too great about that bubble bursting, even if it would mean that some of the smugness of AI would go away. I have a feeling that it would backfire in the worst possible way.
Very quickly, but I'm going to ask you a very big question. I don't know where you stand on sort of the AI safety debate, but my understanding was that for a brief period, the UK was seen as taking a leading role. Obviously, we had that AI safety summit. Then Yoshua Bengio, who along with Geoffrey Hinton is one of the people very worried that AI could essentially kill us all, was invited to write a report for the UK government. And sort of, people who I follow in the space were saying that seemed reasonable. They set up this AI Security Institute that you say you're working with. Is the UK still playing that role if it ever did, or have we now switched to we're just desperate for your money? So screw all the safety stuff. Microsoft, Google, OpenAI, please just come here and give us some crumbs.
So I think it's there is still some good kind of technical work. There's a field within AI safety called AI alignment, where there is basically checking how is a model willing to deceive you, stuff like that. Well, ChatGPT just basically will try and deceive you. There is actually reasonably good research being done at the AI Security Institute, most from an academic perspective and a lot of this kind of stuff. But for me, the kind of biggest worry with AI in general is the political economy of it, which might be a boring Marxist answer, but it's, who owns this stuff? If we owned all of it and we decide what we want to do with it, then maybe it would just be less scary. So there's that aspect of safety where the unsafe stuff is that it's all owned by private corporations. From a very technical perspective of, will the models kind of work with humans in a commercial perspective? I think we're doing decent research actually. And there's, not horrible people, there's good people. Yeah. So there's good people who care about kind of very specific definition, but it is a very, I don't know, I guess a centrist liberal conception of safety and security as, we need to make this technology safe so it doesn't blow up. But it doesn't look at the kind of interconnectedness of things, I think, enough. So yeah, it's here and there. I would say we could be better. We could be a bit more ambitious. We could be a bit more like we decide what we want to do with AI, and it's only going to be for public benefit. But right now, the research is limited to kind of technical safety around these models.